Welcome to the premiere episode of a new television series called Monday through Friday, Cellular Agriculture for a Pandemic-Free Future. My name is George Ortega, and it is 10:13 p.m. on Tuesday, July 7th. And this new series is about presenting a message that's exceedingly important to our future health and economic prospects. It's so important that essentially every Monday through Friday, I'm going to be repeating the same information over and over and over through this White Plains Community Media station, and then uploading the episodes to YouTube until the message is heard, and we begin to do what we need to do to end future pandemics. It's not complicated. It's very doable. We just have to have the will to do it, the will and the understanding. All right, so let's get started. There are 10 basic points I'm going to be presenting, and we'll go into the details on future episodes also. So the first point is that you hear some pundits on TV, some politicians refer to this coronavirus, COVID-19, as a 100-year event. You know, something like this only happens every 100 years. No, that's exceedingly inaccurate, and it's a dangerous assessment of our situation. Basically, the reason I say that is because the last major pandemic like this was in 1918, so it's 102 years. That killed 50 million people. Okay, it's called the Spanish flu. They're not really sure whether it originated from a pig farm or a chicken farm, but it's pretty sure that it originated from a factory, from a family farm, a small farm. It wasn't even a factory farm back then. I'm not sure they even had factory farms back then. So they make this inaccurate assessment because they don't realize that, like, back in 1918, the world was far less populated. There's far less farming going on, and far less travel. They didn't have the airline industry like we have today. So that's just two of various factors that make events like what created the Spanish flu much more likely. And these events have been escalating at a very, very rapid rate since the 1980s. You know, each decade, we see more and more of these risks. HIV, incidentally, is one of these. Ebola, MERS, SARS, swine flu, bird flu, mad cow disease, sorry. These are all examples of events in the past. And if you noticed, some of these have been over the last decades. You know, so like, you know, this program is about kind of like getting us to do what we need to do, so when in a year or two, however long it takes, when we're opening up our society again, our economy, we will be opening it up into a world where we're virtually pandemic risk-free. You know, if we do the work that we have to do now, spend the money we have to spend now, we can reasonably make that assessment. So, all right, so that's the first very important point. And so the idea is, like, actually, no, the first point is, that was the second point, actually. So, like, oh, I'm just getting started this, whatever. So, like, the first point, maybe it's like the first point is pretty difficult to deliver. Maybe it's difficult to hear. It's that this is happening to us. I mean, I'm addressing the 80 to 90% of us here in America who believe in God or higher power. Okay. So, and along with that belief tends to come the belief that when we as individuals and as a collective, as a civilization, do good, we're rewarded, you know, and when we do bad or evil, we get punished. And I hope that many of you see this in your lives, in your individual lives. You know, when you're good, life is good to you. When you take shortcuts, try to like take advantage of people, hurt people, you know, karma, what goes around comes around, seems we get punished for that. So the punishment in this case, I mean, the evil in this case is like we abuse and in many cases torture over 70 billion animals each year in our mainly factory farms, sometimes in our other farms, smaller farms. But that's why this is happening to us. I mean, think about it. If you're religious, if you believe in God, if you believe in kind of divine justice, I think you'll understand this. This is like, this is more horrific than the Holocaust, is more horrific than slavery. I can't think of anything more horrific. And like, for example, if you were given the choice between being one of these animals on one of those farms, and these animals, like they're sentient, they feel pain. Anybody who has a cat or a dog understands this, and most people don't realize that actually pigs are smarter than dogs. And pigs are, living in, like, for example, a female sow gestating, pregnant, she's kept in a crate so small she can't even turn around in many cases for months at a time. It drives them insane. It's beyond horrible. So like, if you had a choice of that kind of life or a life in a chicken breeding facility that's just as horrible, I think you'd rather be a slave or in the Holocaust. That's how horrible I mean, and I'm not going to blame myself on this because, like, I've been a vegan for 15 years. You, your family, your friends, this is the evil that you're doing on a daily basis. You've been doing it for decades. You don't want to look at it because it's so evil. You don't want to, you like to see yourself and your friends and family as good people. In a lot of ways you are, okay? But in this one way, you're beyond horrible. So you're kind of inviting this judgment from God. And it could get a lot worse. In other words, this, it could have been a pandemic like the 1918 that killed 50 million people. So, all right. So basically, this is punishment. And to overcome this punishment, we're going to have to redeem ourselves. And the first step is to end factory farming, to end the farming of animals completely, and transition to a new way of growing meat. Now, so, okay, so that's the point. So in other words, like the third point is, once we end the farming of animals, which we absolutely have to do if we ever have any kind of like a reasonable chance of avoiding these pandemics, we're going to have to switch. We're going to either have to all become vegan, and not eat any meat, dairy, or eggs at all, which is very, very unlikely. There's about maybe 2% of us in the United States who are vegan. Or we're going to have to rely on kind of like a gift from God. In 2013, a new industry emerged. The proof of concept was presented in London by this doctor, Mark Post, who demonstrated that it is possible to grow meat and eggs and dairy in a lab. And I am like coughing like it's crazy, and I was like, I'm going to take a break and stop this timer, and I will be right back. I was out for a walk earlier, and I don't know what's going on. I'll be back. Hold on. All right, it's 2-3 minutes later. I'm back. My voice is still a bit hoarse. The window was open right behind me, and it's a really damp night. I hope that's it. Whoa, this timer didn't start. Okay, it just started again. Got to end about maybe 15 seconds before the timer says. So anyway, we have to transition from farming animals, which makes the next pandemic inevitable. We won't be able to avoid it. It's like playing Russian roulette, and or we all go vegan, and we know that's not going to happen. Or we start growing this meat, dairy, and eggs through a new technology. Again, Mark Post premiered in London in 2013, and now there are about 40 or 50 startups trying to overcome the research challenges to scaling up so that they can mass produce these products and we can eat them. They're incidentally much healthier than the meat we eat now. They involve no animal cruelty, absolutely none. So we're not getting punished by God for this insanely cruel practice that everybody's in denial of, and probably explains why we're going through this coronavirus. So these, the reason these are pandemic-free, these products, they have to be manufactured. And then when I say manufactured, look in the supermarkets. Almost all our food is processed, manufactured. You know, it's like, so anyway, it's manufactured and sanitized, sterile, you know, microbe-free labs. It has to be. So that's, you know, we're getting a much, much safer product than the product we eat now that sometimes have E. coli and salmonella and many other microbes that get us sick. I mean, you get these product recalls all the time. So it's safer for us, doesn't harm any animals, and keeps us safe, really like 99 point whatever %, you know, risk-free from these future pandemics. And that's the, and let me tell you, this is the only way we're going to be free of pandemics. I mean, because like the only other option theoretically is for us to develop a universal vaccine that would work against not just all flus, but all bacteria, you know, all influenza and bacteria strains. That's probably, from what I understand, at least several decades out. It's a much, much more difficult challenge. So this, you know, if we're going to like emerge from this crisis, not living in fear of the next one that might come 5 years later, 10 years later, and again, destroy our economy and kill a lot of people and just shut us down again, we have to do this. You know, there's no reasonable choice. All right, so now the problem is that this new industry is extremely underfunded. You know, the top company, I think Mosa Meats or maybe Memphis Meats, one company acquired about $160 million in financing recently. But after that, the others, if they're lucky, as of last year, if they're really lucky, they get maybe 10, 15 million. Most of them are working with, let's say, $1 million or $2 million. You know, that's how underfunded this industry is. And so here's the point. We just spent almost $4 trillion on mitigating the economic disruption, you know, collapse of having to close our economy, our stores, our restaurants, everything, you know, and we're not done. We will probably spend here in the United States another 3-4 trillion to revive our economy. But we're not spending any money to prevent future pandemics. We may be, you know, the CDC may be funded a bit more now, and they're working on strategies to contain the next pandemic, which is inevitable unless we do what I'm presenting here. You know, we basically have to do this. So the idea is like, unless, if we spent like almost $4 trillion, we're going to spend so much more money on this. And if we haven't spent any money on this, like from our federal government, you know, state governments, you know, across the world, we should be spending at least, at the very least, $50 billion to fast track this research. In other words, like at the rate of investment in this new industry that we have, it may take a decade or longer for these research challenges to be overcome. But if we pump $50 billion into this, which is, you know, again, we just spent $4 trillion, 50 billion is like nothing. You know, we might have these products in supermarkets in 2, 3, 4 years. You know, by the time we're coming out of this, we're opening up fully, we might have these products in supermarket shelves, so we won't have to worry about the next one. And like, and an example of this fast tracking is like, most people don't know this, but the fastest a vaccine has ever been brought to market was in 1957. It took them 4 years to do the testing. All right, so they're fast tracking that. So, you know, we might have the vaccine ready in a year or a year and a half, which is like a lot faster than 4 years. So apply that same principle to just fast tracking and scaling up this research on cellular agriculture. Cellular agriculture is the technical name for what's known as clean meat, cultured meat, lab-grown meat. It's basically this process again. And let me explain this in more detail. The reason it's like cruelty-free, they take a cell from an animal in a way that doesn't even hurt them. and then they grow it in a lab. And, you know, cells multiply. That's what cells do in a medium, in a growth medium. And that's really as simple as it is. They're not genetically engineered. They're natural. And the product, the meat that they create, the dairy, the eggs, are identical biologically to what we're eating now. Like they're a lot healthier. We can make them a lot healthier. We can feed them a growth medium, you know, nutrients that are much healthier. For example, with meat, a lot of our meat contains cholesterol, which kills a lot of people. So we could have like the fat in these meats not have any cholesterol at all. This isn't genetic engineering. This is just basically feeding these cells different nutrients that don't create these very harmful substances that cows and chickens and pork, you know, pigs create. Okay, so anyway, so like, again, and we should, you know, this should be a campaign issue. This is a perfect time, you know, between now and November. Politicians should be talking about this, activist organizations, people who have, you know, lost people to this, you know, because like the livestock industry, they don't care. They're fighting this industry. You know, the livestock industry, the people who grow pigs and cows and chicken, you know, they care about their jobs. You know, it doesn't matter to them how many people, how many millions of people die. They're fighting this new industry. They're delaying the regulations. They're just making it hard for this industry to emerge. Talk about evil. All right, so anyway, yeah, point 6. If we don't do this, you know, if we emerge from this pandemic and we don't have this cellular agriculture, clean meat industry up and running in supermarkets everywhere, you know, we are going to live in fear. And it's just a matter of time, and it's going to come sooner than later, the next pandemic. And we may not be as lucky as, you know, relatively as we are now. And it could be like a 1918 type pandemic. So, okay. That's an important point to keep in mind. So, again, you know, this next pandemic may be much more devastating than this one now. And it's inevitable. There's, you know, I mean, like, it's as inevitable as the sun coming up tomorrow, unless a comet, you know, like just destroys us all tonight. You know, we're going to see tomorrow. We're going to wake up to tomorrow. This is as inevitable as that, unless we do what we need to do. Okay, about 10 more minutes, 10 and a half more minutes. Because this is the first episode. I want to make sure I get through this. And again, like I'm gonna be doing a lot of research between now and then, because I know this stuff. I've read a couple of books. I recommend books. I read articles. You know, I'm very familiar with this, but like there are details that I want to present to you that are important. Okay, so all right. How will, you know? I'm going to be doing this same show, and this is kind of like an experiment. I mean, like, you know, when have you ever seen a program, a television program, that's presenting the exact same pretty much information night after night after night, with the hope and expectation that some things need to be repeated over and over and over and over again, so people can grasp them, and so people can like overcome their resistance to hearing the message. And that's what this is about. So I'm going to be doing this show, God willing, you know, as many days, Monday through Friday, you know, as it takes, as many weeks, as many months. You know, the last series I did, which was a preparation, I guess, for this, I did 62 episodes. You know, that just ended. And this one, you know, I hope it doesn't have to go beyond 60, 120. I hope that, like, you know, within a month, you know, maybe 20 episodes, people begin to get this, and the media begins to cover it, politicians begin to talk about it, and the funding begins to get released. That's my hope. But I'm going to, you know, my expectation of myself is I'm going to keep doing this until you get it. It's not a difficult, you know, anybody who's been listening, watching so far understands that this is not difficult to understand. You know, I'm not saying anything that you know requires a college degree or even a high school degree to understand. This is basic logic, basic facts. You know, these family farms, factory farms are breeding grounds for pandemics. And unless we end them, and the sooner the better, we're going to have more coronavirus-like pandemics. That's the message. And again, the other message is like, if we want to do this soon, if we don't want to take chances, we will pump $50 billion into the research. You know, just as a disclaimer, I'm not going to probably say this often. I'm not invested in this industry. I don't invest in companies. I'm doing this because I like to do good. You know, God is making me do this, actually. This is like, you know, it's not up to me. Anyway, so yeah, I'll know that I'll stop doing the show when the politicians and the media start talking about it and when the funds start getting released. Now, your job, you know, in this is, you may not believe, you know, that I know what I'm talking about. You may not believe some of what I say. So like, do a little research. You know, this is all online. Just Google clean meat, Google cultured meat, cellular agriculture. Google pandemics, the origin of pandemics. They're zoonotic is the term, meaning that they come from animals. Again, mad cow disease came from cows. HIV came from, they believe, chimpanzees. Swine flu comes from pigs. Bird flu comes from birds. You know, they all, a lot of times what happens is that there's a chain of transmission. First, maybe a bat or snake or a wild animal will infect a domesticated animal, and then the domesticated animal infects us. And then the virus will mutate sometimes. For example, I think this coronavirus is already mutated, so it's like killing more young people than it did before. And I think it's spreading faster. So, so, you know, like your job again. All right, in terms of your research, there's two books I want to recommend. First one is by a guy called Paul Shapiro. He was the past vice president of the Humane Society of America, the United States. And he wrote a book that I think came out in 2016, I believe. It's called Clean Meat. It's the seminal work on this industry. Basically, he chronicles how this happened. Just briefly, you know, Winston Churchill was probably the first known person to suggest this. And in a 1932 article for Popular Mechanics, he said that in the future, rather than growing a whole chicken, you know, to get a breast or a leg, we're going to be growing these parts individually without all that waste. So he was, you know, prescient in that way, 1932. And then this guy from the Netherlands, I believe, William van Eelen, started promoting the idea, I think maybe in the 80s or so. You know, for decades he worked on it. He had some patents. And so finally, again, in 2013, we finally proved that the methodology works. The technology is viable. It just needs to be scaled up to be marketable in supermarkets. All right, so again, like learn about that. All right, the second book is by a guy called Chase Purdy. Just came out this year. I'm not done reading it. I'm listening to it, actually. I like audiobooks, you know, like to hear it rather than read it. And so he basically chronicles the same kind of history, but presents a few other facts that I wasn't aware of. And again, hopefully the end of the book will take it past where Paul Shapiro you know, took it with his book. And hopefully there'll be other books coming out. But again, cellular agriculture, cultured meat, clean meat. Just Google these terms, wiki. There's a lot of short videos. Like if you want to see the process, there's 5, 6-minute videos, 2-minute videos on this whole process of how this works. Lab-grown meat, it's another term. All right, so the next job, because I can't, you know, I'm just presenting the information. You know, I'm the messenger, and hopefully I don't get killed for this. But your job, after you understand that I'm telling you the truth, that I know what I'm talking about, and I'm the only person doing this so far, okay? All right, let me let you in on something. I am exceedingly intelligent, really intelligent. My IQ is in the 99.64th percentile. That is really, really, really smart. Okay, but as you've probably noticed, you know, I've got like an artistic personality. I'm more of a scientist. So in terms of like presenting this information in ways that maybe sound convincing, like some motivational speakers, no, you're not getting that from me. I'm giving you the information, but you know, again, do your research, trust. Once you understand that I know what I'm talking about, and this is our only way of being pandemic risk-free, talk to your friends about it, talk to your family about it, talk to, if you know a politician, talk to a politician about it, if you know somebody in the media, because basically now, yeah, the job, we've got about almost 3 minutes left. The job now is to make the politicians talk about it. You know, ideally, this is a perfect election. In other words, like in November, we've got 4 months to get this message out so that both Biden and Trump will absolutely have to talk about it, not just Biden and Trump, so that every Senate candidate, every House candidate in every district is going to have to talk about this. It's going to have to talk about what they're doing, not just to handle the effects of this current pandemic, but to ensure that 5 years after we're out of this, we don't have to go through this again. Because, you know, they're not talking about this. I'm sorry, you know, like, again, the best they're doing is talking about how, you know, they've got to like be better at testing and what is that called? Tracking, whatever. Again, this is the only way that we have, and then, like, you know, if we wait, if we don't start to think about this until our society's open, well, that leaves about maybe 2, 3, 4 years where we're, and it may be longer again, because like if this doesn't get funded, it may be 10 years before these products come to market, maybe like a decade that we're at risk for another pandemic. And I don't think anybody wants to go through something like this again. You know, this can, you know, it's just devastating to, you know, to people, to our psychology, to our economy, healthcare systems, you know, our whole society. So think about it. Okay, so that was the first episode. Again, Monday through Friday, every Monday through Friday on White Plains Community Media, channel 76 is if you get Optimum as your TV, cable TV service, or channel 45 if you get Verizon. And I upload the episodes to YouTube. You know, I'm going to try to be a bit more diligent about uploading them in a more timely manner now. But that's the point. And I will. This was, I think, a good first episode. We'll get into this over and over in more detail on coming episodes. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you tomorrow night on Monday through Friday, Cellular Agriculture for a Pandemic-Free World.